We are back. Infowarrior with Jason Bermas. We got Tarpley coming up in the next hour. I want to finish up this clip with Dr. Mehmet Oz. He's about to talk about the 1976 Guillain Barre, and he's also about to say, hey, I'm a doctor, but I'm Mr. Oz at home. My kids ain't taking the shot. No dice McGrady. He knows about the waivers. He knows it's not good for you. But again, he's towing the line because he's got a cushy job on the TV set. All right, let's hit the clip.
We'll have a public facility to be able to administer vaccines, so there are many places you can go. But Campbell, I think the big story is what you mentioned earlier. I would bet half the population is watching the show right now and saying, you know, I'm not sure I want that. And they're saying, oh, I can always treat myself if I get infected. I won't get infected anyway. And, you know, would it be that big of an illness if I did get it? And I think we're actually wandering into a very interesting dilemma, which is that the government and healthcare providers are saying, we advise this. It makes sense to you. But if we push too hard, we actually build up more resistance. We've got to be very fair about saying, listen, this is just like a government warning a population about an oncoming hurricane. Right? If it's a Class 4 hurricane coming towards New Orleans before Katrina, you got to tell people it might be a problem. Sometimes the hurricane misses. But if it does hit, people should at least be knowledgeable that they made their own choices.
But you say that, and to your point, we looked into this. There's a new poll out from the Harvard School of Public Health that only 40% of adults say they are absolutely certain they're going to get the vaccine. Yeah. That means most of the country is either on the fence or they're not going to do it. The reasons they're giving is they're concerned about possible side effects from the vaccine. They don't think they're at risk of serious illness, and they think that if they do get it, that they're going to be able to get Tamiflu or Relenza or one of these medicines. I mean, aren't those valid reasons to maybe skip it?
Some of them are valid reasons, but remember, part of the desire that you have in getting the population immunized is to prevent the virus from spreading to those who aren't protected, people who are more at risk, young kids, as I mentioned, pregnant women. And so you might weather the storm, but from a population's perspective, it may not be best for us. And by the way, when you get the flu, you're sick for a week. Yes, vast majority of the time you'll be fine unless you're one of those high-risk groups. And although Relenza does work well, Tamiflu is already building up resistance. I think it would be wise for us to prevent the illness if it's possible. And with regard to risks, there is no question, Campbell. It would be dishonest to say that we know for sure the vaccine is going to be safe for everybody. You give a vaccine to a couple 100 million people, there are going to be problems. And we won't even know if those problems are related to the vaccine. But to be fair to many Americans who are concerned, there's probably going to be some issues that arise with the vaccine, but we think they're going to be exceedingly rare. Even if they're as bad as they were in 1976 with the immunization given for the swine flu that resulted in Guillain-Barré, the incidence of getting that wasn't that much different from getting hit by lightning. The proverbial risk factor most of us shy away from.
Look, you are telling a mother who is trying to decide myself whether to get my kids vaccinated when the time comes. And I'm reading this, 51% of parents, only 51% are absolutely certain. I'll be honest, I'm in that 50% that isn't absolutely certain. So how do you convince me? How do you convince the other parents out there that we need to do this?
Campbell, I'm going to get it.
Yes.
If that helps at all, but I'll tell you, my wife is not going to immunize our kids. Because I've got 4 of them, and when I go home, I'm not Dr. Oz, I'm Mr. Oz. And so you are just like most Americans. All I can say is that there are going to be 2 extremes of the population. Some folks who say, you know what, I'm going to do this, it's right for all of us, I'm going to make it happen. And some of us are going to say, you know what, I just don't want that. I don't like the idea of government and being involved. I feel pressured. It's not that big a deal. It's all a hoax. It's hysteria, etc. Most folks are in the middle. And my hope from programs like this and others is you'll provide a rational outlook and say, you know what, for most of us, it's the right thing to do. But the most important groups, pregnant women, young children, they're absolutely the groups we fear immunizing the most. But they're the ones that have a much higher complication rate from the swine flu.
It's true. To your point, I know we're out of time here, but pregnant women 6 times more likely to die from swine flu. The numbers are really frightening.
And I don't want anybody who's pregnant or who has young kids to watch this program and think, you know what, I should be on the fence. Those are the groups that I really want to make the message clear to. If all of us in the healthcare field, and we know what the risks are, we're immunizing ourselves, please let that influence you a little bit.
All right. Good advice.
How about the fact you're not going to let your kids take it? I hope that influences people a little bit. He says the majority of us are going to take it. Well, I count you and your wife as 2 people in the household, and your children as 4 more. It seems like 2/3 of your household aren't taking it, Dr. Oz. You can't even be honest with yourself on the TV because it pays the rent. Not the rent, it's probably a rather large mortgage. We're going to come back with Webster Tarpley after this. It's the Infowarrior with Jason Bermas.
I searched for fatherland.
We are back and streaming live this October 8th, 2009, Thursday. I am Jason Bermas. This is the Infowarrior. We are now joined by author and relative genius Webster Tarpley. We haven't had him on in quite some time, and I wanted to get his take on the financial revelations that are out there over the past couple of months. Admitted 9.8% unemployment rate. This is the headline over at the Telegraph today. Britain overtakes U.S. as top financial center. Well, of course they have. Their pound is worth more. The euro is worth more compared to the SDR, or special drawing rights unit, the true global currency that is being used today. Now you can type in SDR conversion rates into Google, and it'll bring you to a plethora of websites providing you with the information. How are you today, Webster?
Fine, Jason. How are you?
Excellent, excellent.
I'm just back from Iceland, and I'd like to say a few words about what's going on in Iceland, because I think from this, Americans can learn from a small country how you fight, because they're fighting the International Monetary Fund that you've just been talking about. They're fighting the European Central Bank, the European Commission in Brussels, and the issue is the British and the Dutch. This goes back about a year, right after the fall of Lehman Brothers. The Icelanders had 3 banks that were functioning as hot money operations. They were essentially deregulated, wild finance derivatives banks, and they opened some branches in Great Britain and the Netherlands. And when the bottom fell out just a little over a year ago, there was a panic run on these banks, which was not surprising because there had been a panic run on Lehman Brothers and an AIG. There was a panic run on the money markets here in Wall Street. But at the height of the crisis, Gordon Brown, who, of course, is Mr. Derivatives, he's the great deregulator. Even though he's from the Labor Party, he's actually an extreme monetarist, sort of Friedmanite or Austrian school kind of guy. He had totally deregulated the British banking system. So you could open up these branches, and the British didn't look into it. But at the height of the crisis, he decided that he would seize the Icelandic banks in Great Britain, and he would just take them away, and then he would then reimburse all the depositors at a very high rate, higher than they ever would have had any reason to expect. And then he turned around and demanded all the money from Iceland. And the Dutch, in this Anglo-Dutch system, right, the sort of Royal Dutch Shell combine, Balkenende, who's a reactionary himself, a right-winger, free marketeer, he demanded the same thing from Iceland. So at the beginning of it, Gordon Brown was demanding 20 billion pounds from Iceland, and they've toned that down a little bit. But Iceland, if you look at the map, it's right at the top of the North Atlantic. It's just below the Arctic Circle, and it has a population of about 330,000 people. So it's 1/1000th of the U.S. It would take 1,000 Icelands to make the population of the U.S. Their gross domestic product is about $12 billion. So here come the British and the Dutch, and they say, guess what? We're sending you a bill really based on nothing. Based on no commitment, no signature, no regulations or anything of the kind, just a pure active force, a diktat by Gordon Brown and this Balkenende. We want at least $6 billion from you, and probably more. And in the meantime, while you're paying it, we want at least 5.5% interest. So this is simply insane. What that would lead to is, of course, depopulation. A lot of the younger people in Iceland would leave. Their existing social safety net, which is quite capable, would be completely dismantled. Their health system would be dismantled, which is also, I think, quite a good one. And they would lose their main trump card in the world, which is the fact that they have a very highly trained, educated, scientifically competent workforce, and they would basically collapse. And this money can simply never be repaid. It's a physical impossibility.
Well,
so
on the other side of this break,
talking about debt moratorium.
Well, on the other side of this break, I want you to tell the listeners how the Icelandic people are fighting back, because it really is a microcosm of what's going on globally. Back after this, it's the Infowarrior with Jason Bermas, prisonplanet.tv, Infowars.com.